Thank you for joining us again on another episode of the Old Ways podcast. I have sort of a special episode tonight. I am not your keeper, handler, or storyteller this evening. I am your host. And we're going to get a chance to interview a guest in regards to something coming very soon, something that you could too be a part of. And so what I'll do is I will get out of our guest's way and I'll let them introduce themselves. So guests, tell us who you are and what you're up to.
Hi, my name is Kim Godwin. I am a freelancer for Onyx Path Publishing. I am a writer and developer. I'm currently working the developer on Scion Mythic Shards, which is currently crowdfunding. But in the past, I've worked on, they came from Classified, they came from the Cyclops Cave, Witchford Academy, Danger Zone. They came from the RPG anthology, Scion, Titans Rising. I worked on 3 Aberrant books. And I've worked on The World Below, At the Gates, Curseborn. So I've run the gambit of Onyx Path book lines right now.
Yeah, no, that's great. Listeners here will likely understand several of those. We played several They Came Froms on the podcast. We played The World Below. We got a chance to be a part of the Curseborn rollout, which was a ton of fun. Mm-hmm. One of our cast members was part of the AP, which was a ton of fun to listen to. We have not yet, at this point, cracked the Scion portion of what Onyx Path does. And so, since you've written for some of those products, I wonder if you could give our listeners who may be unfamiliar with what Scion is a sort of elevator speech as a primer on why they might be interested in Scion.
Scion is an urban fantasy game where you are the children chosen or incarnate of gods. All myths are true. All gods are true. So you rise up and deal with god problems from first visitation in Hero and up until godhood. Origin deals with you know that there's something different about you, but you don't know what. And there's something up with your parentage. It's like your dad or your mom may not be there, and you'll find out why. And the gods deal with all kinds of shenanigans. So it's some Percy Jackson sort of stuff, but it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think analogs are really important when we're talking about systems that and settings people have not played before. So I think that Percy Jackson as an analog would be good, right? There's probably certain Marvel series which are in line with the idea of being the son of a god, whether it be Thor and Loki or some of the other the realms that are out there. So that's a fun analog to think about, right? Mythic Shard, as I understand it, is a bit of a divergent from some of the other stuff that's come out. I wonder if you might be able to tell us a little bit more about the crowdfunding that's going on right now.
So with Scion Mythic Shards, we present alternate realities for Scion. So instead of the classic urban fantasy, we have a post-apocalyptic traversing across the barren wasteland. The gods are dead, and now it's a race to see who gets to take over the world rise up as god. And after the end, in 4 colors, it is Golden Age, Silver Age superhero stories. So instead of you're still the children of the gods, but now you help the world fight against the forces of APEP as a mass superhero in costumes and stuff like that, with a private life and a public life. But it has that sort of nostalgic, over the top, bombastic feeling, action, adventure sort of feeling of the comics. In Farewell to Heroes, you are in a world where there was this big incident that went south, and now the public hates and fears Scions. So you can't do hero work anymore in public, because if people see who you are, the government is going to come and arrest you, because now you're public enemy and number one. How can you be a hero in a world that doesn't protect you? You're trying to protect it, but it doesn't want you anymore. So it's that noir feeling. So it's very claustrophobic cities, skulking around the shadows, doing heists, doing prison breaks. You're living on the fringes of society, dealing with lots of criminal elements, assassins, bounty hunters, and then you're hiding from the police. Then there is Cyber Scion, where instead of being the children of the divine, you are attuned to divine machines, which are mecha. So on the lowest level of like hero, it's barely like a power armor. And when you get up to god level of mecha, it's like an aircraft carrier where they deploy smaller mecha from it.
Mm.
And then you're fighting against titanic corporations and titanic kaiju. So the corporations are trying to hoard the resources of the divine machines and the ambrosia technology, and they're creating these kaiju, these problems. And so, as a Scion in Cyber Scion, you're fighting them. So it's that cyberpunk sort of feeling. Then with Space Odyssey, we go into the future and into spaceships, and your crew is lost in this Tenerum sector of space, and you're dealing with alien gods and trying to survive as you're exploring, but you're trying ultimately to get home. So it's space opera. Each of the shards is a very different feel for gameplay. So, and those are the 5 shards that we have established. We're hoping to, with crowdfunding and stretch goals, we'll expand on the shards a little bit more, and maybe add some new shards.
Yeah, I had seen at the time of this recording that it's already funded, which is great. So meeting its initial funding, which is not uncommon for Onyx Pass. Several of their crowdfunders that have gone on, all of them generally fund very quickly initially, which is really great because it does allow the community to sort of put their foot on the gas and get as much as they possibly can. I think that's great. Just from the shards that you've listed, I can think of several games that people might be interested in. I have a friend of mine that would probably be able to spin up a Robotech-esque game fairly quickly with that shard, and or at least something like that flair, which would be fun. And I think one of the things that has continued to impress me about Onyx Path is that what the setting material seems to do is continue to offer options. I guess in somewhat of a way to harken back to splat books that would come out for, we'll just say, previous publishing companies where they're trying to give you settings, they're trying to give you ammunition for the discussion about, well, I want to play a game over here, or I want to play a game in this setting. And there's nothing that, yes, the GMs can, homebrew lots of stuff to make sure that the setting is compelling and interesting for players. But a lot of players need the structural firmament of something in a book or a PDF, whatever it may be, to say, oh, okay, yeah, someone actually looked this over. And there's actually something called balance that exists rather than just some person dreaming up something in their head. So I wonder, as the crowdfunding goes forward, do you have any idea about what they may potentially look as add-ons on, or is that something that continue to keep cloaked in mystery?
So we talked about or during, or Harumi, my co-developer, talked about some of the proposed shards that could be added to the book from through crowdfunding at Onyx PathCon. So he talked about Journey to the Wild West, where you have the Song Wukong, Journey to the West, Chinese wuxia in a Western setting. So the Monkey King and Cowboys, which will be a lot of fun. There's like a teen drama one. I think we were talking about calling it Scion High. There was some talk about a horror shard. There's talk about a team sports shard,
Sure.
and then someone was jokingly talking about Mythic Sharks as an underwater one. So we'll see what ends up happening with that. Yeah.
So for folks who are listening to this that have not played Scion before, can you give us an idea of perhaps the systematic portions of it, like what type of die systems it uses, or what are they going to need to know to play?
So with Scion, we use a story path, which is a D10 system. And then each book of Scion adds on to it. So with so you start you if you do like from 0 to hero, literally, you start as a Scion in Origin, where it's pre-visitation. So you don't quite know who your divine parent is, and your powers are just starting to develop. And then in hero, you've met your divine parent or their messenger, and now you realize that you are the child of the gods, of which god in particular. And then you've kind of started dealing with that level of dealing with power and starting to build your legend. In demigod, you've embraced that mantle of divinity, and now you are gaining more powers that appropriate to liken to the Greek mythologies, right? You're Perseus, you're Hercules, running around doing stuff for your divine heritage, and then in God, you've assumed that mantle of godhood. So now you're dealing with much bigger problems, and then you're tasking out other people to do stuff. So it's you become the god of thunder, or whatever your legend you build your legend around. So you have to deal with omens like the bad stuff that comes with the negative side of that sort of divinity. Like Odin only has one eye. So it's like, oh shoot, now those things will sort of manifest based off the things. And with Scion, there is no canon. So there is no one pantheon that exists over top of the other. So you have the Greek pantheon, you have the Japanese pantheon of Kami, you have the Tengu have their own gods as well, and they don't make the distinction between gods and titans as much. And with titans, it's more in Greek mythology where they're the kind of the evil gods, or they're threats. They're usually the forces of nature.
I heard you mention the name APEP a little bit ago. Is there a source threat for Scions, that a big bad, as it were?
Usually it's some sort of titan or evil god doing schemes, but it depends on the game. For the Mythic Shards, we very definitively made the overall bad guy or the antagonist in Four Colors Apep. Apep killed Zeus, and is trying to form his own new pantheon of evildoers who go and do evil. And with Scion, it's the main line of Scion. It's more, the in certain pantheons, it's very obvious. There's a clear line of good and evil gods, whereas in some pantheons, that line is a little more gray.
Okay. So if someone was sitting down with Scion for the first time, what would be a couple of important things to do when they're getting set to sort of build an introductory or a new character? What are the things that they need to keep in mind?
They have to keep in mind what their concept is, because sometimes you lean more into a specific calling than another, and there's so many options for play, and callings tend to be what you end up falling into with as far as like the paths. Because if you build someone that's very very firm in their version of right and wrong, and they're very driven by a sense of justice, then making them a judge would be more appropriate. If they're more interested in playing a character that's very much into like exploring secrets and stuff, then liminal would probably be more appropriate. Or if they're more of a charismatic person, they're more of a lover than a fighter, then taking something like lover would be more appropriate. So it's like, how do you want to play? With most story path games, you pick several paths that your character can follow down, and because sometimes your initial idea isn't necessarily the way you want to be put all your eggs into that basket as you play.
Okay.
So it's once you figure out what you want to do, then it makes it easier to build out your character, because the different callings have different purviews and abilities tied to them. So it's like, oh man, I want to build this character, but I'm going to go all this way. But then I build all my stats in a way that doesn't support doing that stuff. It kind of hurts. So it's like, okay, what calling do I want to do? Of course, then which divine heritage do you want? What pantheon do you want to be a part of? What heritage? And if you go that route, it's like, well, you can do a surface level thing and then dig deeper. Because we don't use the Abrahamic religions, but we do every other world religion pretty much, or world culture, as far as divine parentage.
So let me ask a detailed question for you about Mythic Shards. And that is, what part did you get a chance to get your hands on and write about?
As the developer, I edited. Well, Hermie and I were we split up the work, but at some point of development, we both have touched all of it.
Nice.
But I didn't write any particular shard for this book. I wrote the intro, and then I wrote some general overview of two of the shards, and then some story guiding advice. So we front loaded the chapter. We had there, 20,000 words is a lot to get into like a full setting with story shards and new things. And it's like, oh shoot, we didn't have enough room for story guiding advice, so we put it into the front in the chapter in the intro.
Yeah.
So it's like, this is a general overview of this shard, and here's some advice on how to do it.
Awesome.
So like one of the first stretch goals is adding a fuller story guiding chapter for after the end, which is the first one we presented. So we're gonna probably have that as a stretch goal for all of the shards. So we expand out what we have and give a little bit more advice for how to run a game in the post apocalypse.
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic idea, right? So I think there's a lot of folks that are going to come to Mythic Shards that are relatively new to Scion, like myself. And when you get the PDF or get the book in hand, you're going to want to have some type of advice. Doesn't matter how long you've been sitting and running tables. You need advice from the creators about how the setting is best to be run. You might have your own set of ideas, clearly, but I think it's great. It's a great stretch goal for you, for Onyx Path to have.
More game material is always a good stretch goal. As much as everyone loves the swag, it's like, okay, but how do I want more content?
Yeah, absolutely. And
Be a monstrous book.
just having several Onyx Path books on the shelf back there, the content never lacks. The books are always quality, which is a credit to how Rich and his crew has been doing it for years.
Hmm.
What I'd like to know is where can we find you out there on social media if you're followable there, or and then I'll follow up with saying, if you had a message to give to listeners about why they should back Mythic Shards, what would it be?
So you should back Mythic Shards if you want to give yourself more options and alternate paths to play Scion. Even if you haven't played Scion before, this game is so much fun. It's just different ways of playing these different genres that are a little bit different from the the main Pathfinder D&D Paizo stuff. You don't have the future isn't grimdark like 40K. It's actually kind of it's a lot more fun, I think. There's a lot more hope in this book than you will find in 40K for sure. Like for where you can find me, I'm on Twitter and Instagram, Kim Godwin 18, and then my website KimberlyGodwin.com and StudioAgentH.com.
Well, I want to thank you for setting up some time for us and getting a chance to talk about Mythic Shards. I look forward to an ultra successful mini stretch gold campaign and help it fill a place on the shelf. So thank you so much.
All right, thank you.